there she is, my baby. Oh, I missed you, baby. Oh, oh, hugs, hugs, hugs. I missed you. Ooh. Hey guys, Submoto here. So I'm finally back on the Cafe Racer, which is awesome. But here's the story. I turned her into the mechanic because my spark plugs were getting fouled, meaning that they get all black. And when they do that, the way they were getting black usually means that the mixture of gas and air is wrong. Either it's too lean. You can always tell by the spark plugs how well your engine's running. And in this case, I could tell that I was getting too much gas and too little air. So I figured there was something wrong with the carburetor. Anyway, $1,600 later, I came back and took her for a spin, and the first thing that happened was she died. She died like 3 times on me right after I got her back, and I was like, yeah, my bike. And I just rode for like a few hundred meters, and she died. And when I got back, I rode straight back to the mechanic, and he had all sorts of explanations, like the electronics, like it was that button right here. So I fixed that right there. It took me like 10 minutes to fix it, and said, all right, so it wasn't that, what else? And so we took the spark plugs out, and they were still black, even after, I mean, it was granted a short ride, even like on short rides, so they will get black. So that was the problem, and we stood there till like really late that day, after hours, trying to figure out what was wrong with the bike. And like I said, $1,600 in repairs to the carburetor. So everything's new in the carburetor. Everything's clean, as good as it can get. There's some diaphragms that could be changed, and that's all that's left really. The diaphragms in the housing. And so I bought some diaphragms, and I'm going to change those, and that way I know that my carburetor is tip-top. But here's the thing. I talked about in a previous video that putting air filters and exhausts and stuff, now I have stock exhausts on this bike, but that kind of stuff will screw up your engine, especially with a carburetor like the one I have, which is the CV carburetor. They're just so sensitive. So what I've done is I've decided to go back to the original air filter. So I'd have to, I'm gonna have to buy one today, actually, and see if that works. Because that way I have the original air filter, carburetor that's as good as new, and the engine. Now, granted, this is the second time actually that I've had this problem. Because first time around, I had a different mechanic look at it. And he did the same thing, but he didn't look at the carburetor, he looked at the engine. And that cost $1,600 too, so I've spent so much money on this bike. It's just absolutely ridiculous. It's not even worth that much. I think I've spent more on repairs than the bike is actually worth, by far. But that's the thing. That's the thing with older bikes, and that's part of having, if you want to build a Cafe Racer on an older bike, that's why I keep preaching, buy a newer bike. You can see how it helped with the tracker I built. The tracker is it's a 98, but it's pretty new compared to most Cafe Racers, and that thing just runs. It just doesn't care. When you work on older bikes like this, you can expect them to be pretty expensive, pretty darn expensive. They may be cheap off the bat, like getting the donor motorcycle, but the actual, like, having a motorcycle that's this old is going to cost you some money. So it's not cheaper. If you want a cheaper bike, get something from late 90s, early 2000s, and that'll be a good cheap bike which will require minimum maintenance. In most cases, I mean, some bikes, depends how people treat them and how far they ride on them, etc., etc. But it's going to be a lot better than a bike from the 60s, 70s, or 80s, like this one. So yeah, so that was the problem. So I was kind of an anticlimax getting her back, and I've been trying to figure out what was wrong, and she was kind of like coughing and doing that kind of stuff. and which is really frustrating because I spent so much money on it. And the guy was like, yeah, well, you know, I fixed this and that and used these hours, so it's not like I didn't do anything. I know that, but I'm not a freaking mechanic. I'm like, I turn her in with a problem, I expect you to fix it. Like, I can't use excuses as to, yeah, well, I fixed this and I fixed that. Well, I don't care if you change the wheels. I mean, if the wheels is not the problem, then don't fix it. No, the guy is pretty good. He's a nice guy. I'm not gonna smear his name because you know, he did his best. I guess his best wasn't good enough. And like I mentioned here, I have not been able to find a mechanic in this country yet that has been able to help me. I mean, there are a lot of mechanics, and they're good, I guess, but they're good within the routine that they know. Well, as far as like getting into new stuff, oh yeah, well no, they're wrong, because there are some great, awesome mechanics in this place. Problem is, they don't service the public. They build cafe racers, and they have their own businesses, or they're in other countries, you know, like Danish guys that go out to other countries and do projects and do things. So they exist. I mean, they're just not at the ready. Anyway, so I just figured I'd fill you in on what the status is. So she's, I think she is, like, as far as the coughing thing, I think that's just the diaphragm. So that's why I ordered some new diaphragms. So I'm hoping that'll be fixed as soon as I get those. And the rest, well, we'll see what happens with the new filter, and that way, at least it'll be easier to repair. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I got for you today. So remember to subscribe and ride, and I'll catch you all later.